Hi, I'm Jonathan Block. In this video, I'm going to give a tour of my studio. I'll get deep into each area, but let me give a quick overview. On the left, I have my bass amp. You can see my three main basses around here as well. Got some recorders on top of the bass amp, and I'll get into that. On the floor next to the bass amp, I have my bass pedal board. As we move to the right, we're getting into the Mellotron now. I have the two hardware effects that I use on top of there and the iPad as well that I use in every recording, whether it's just to record, use some effects, or use the iPad just as the only instrument for a particular jam. And then back there I have the couple of interfaces that I use depending on the project. And of course, the Kalimbas are sitting there on the bench. So let me get into each area a little more in depth now. Let's start with the recording part of the studio. The heart of it is the iPad Pro. This is an M4 12-inch iPad Pro on the left there. Right now I'm recording into GarageBand, so I use this in every video, whether it's doing something like this, simply recording a performance, and I'll use GarageBand a lot for that, or using some other DAW or any of the tons of synthesizer or effects apps that I have here. On the iPad, I can use it in conjunction with the hardware like the Mellotron or the bass, or I can just sit on the couch with the iPad and no other instrument and create and record a performance that way. To do that, you need an interface, particularly to get external hardware onto the iPad Pro, and that's the role of the two interfaces on the right there. On the top is a Universal Audio Volt 276 interface, very effective two-channel mobile interface. It gets its power from the iPad Pro. You can plug it into the wall, but it doesn't need to be. And it'll even get power from the iPad Pro if you have a microphone plugged in using phantom power. When I need more channels, or for this video, I'm running the microphone directly into the camera using the Focusrite Scarlett 4-channel interface. Right now I'm just using it as an analog mixer, but when I'm doing recording with other folks or working on other projects to support some of the other channels I have, I often need more than two inputs. So that's the recording part. Let me reposition the camera and we'll go over the Mellotron. So here's the modern digital Mellotron. I have a M4000D Mini. They make a little larger model and they make a much smaller model, and they're actually making a sound module as well that I've seen online. So got a lot of videos on the Mellotron here, so let me dive more into the setup. So on the floor, I've got a Boss volume pedal. And then the output from the volume pedal goes into this JHS pedal. So when I'm recording, this gives me the ability to use two instruments at once. So I have two inputs here. One is the Mellotron, that's with the blue light. And then the red light is for any other external instrument. I have a cord laying on the ground there. Typically I plug a bass in. I used to use my wind synth before that broke, but it just quickly gives me the ability to go from one instrument to the other. And after that we go into a Boss GT1000 core, which is a multi-effects unit. So I have patches on here both for the Mellotron and the bass. So when I'm using two instruments, all I need to do is just change a patch here and I have access to a lot of different effects for the instrument that I'm using. Now, particularly for the Mellotron, once the sound goes out from the GT1000 core, it goes into a Boss RE202 Space Echo. Now, I do not use this typically as a delay. I use it as a sound-on-sound looper. There's a way to get into long delay mode on this delay unit and get it up to 6 seconds of delay. I will put a link in the description to an in-depth video where I go through the whole process of getting this into long delay mode and then how to use it as a sound-on-sound looper. And I'll do a little demonstration of that here just to kind of show you that the studio does actually work. So long and short of it is I'm not really using the Space Echo as a delay. I'm using it as a sound-on-sound looper. And then the output, the stereo output from the Boss goes over to one of the interfaces that I'm using, and then that'll get it into the iPad Pro. I should say that the modern Mellotron only has it has multiple outputs, but the main output is just a mono output. So I'm going mono into the GT1000 core, but this is a stereo effects unit, so that the GT1000 core outputs in stereo, and that stereo input goes into the space echo. So that's the overview of the sound. So this is a small studio. I don't have lots of equipment compared to a lot of folks out there, particularly on the keyboard aspect of it. I have in the past, but I like to be able to easily replicate what I'm doing in a studio live. So I want to be able to just grab whatever instruments I'm using. Smaller the better. I like to travel light and just be able to jam or do a live show with just whatever kind of part of the studio I need, whether it's the Mellotron, whether it's the bass. And if it's everything, it's just the same routing, the same signal chain, whether it's in the studio or live. All right, let me just do kind of a quick couple of minutes sound on sound thing with the Mellotron. So just a quick sample to show you what this can do. Also, you can engage and disengage the space echo to then solo over whatever you've created as that loop. And I'm just using the Mellotron for this. Again, I have another input here. I could plug any other instrument in either to do the solos or to add to the loop. All right, let me reposition the camera and I'll get down to the bass stuff. Here's the bass section of the studio. Let me do a quick overview and then I want to dive into the effects and play a little with the bass as well. You saw my 3 basses at the beginning. I have 2 Rob Allen fretless basses with tape wound strings, a Mouse 30, which is a short scale, and then a deep 4. I also have a Gibson SG Standard bass. Have that strung with flat wound strings as well. Those go into the pedal board, which I'll get into, but let's start with the amp. I have a Mesa Subway D800 head. Gets up to 800 watts, but I'm not pushing out anything close to that into that small Trace Elliott 10-inch ELF bass speaker. So this combo can get very, very loud. There's also very good direct input and output on the back of the Mesa to go into a board or to record. Let me zoom in on the pedal board and talk a little bit about that and do some sound samples. Let's take a look at the pedal board that I use for bass. This happens to be the setup I have right now. I have lots of different pedals, so I trade things in and out often, particularly when it comes to compressors, which I have way too many bass compressors to play around with. So the signal goes in starting on the right with a Boss TU3 tuner. I use that both for tuning and as a mute. When I'm using the GT1000 core, that has a tuner and mute built right in, so I don't really need anything else. The output from the Boss tuner goes into a Keeley Bassist. As I mentioned, I love compression. I use a lot of different compression pedals. This one, there's really, it's a no-frills compression pedal, but it's one of my favorites. It does what it's supposed to do, and it's very easy to dial in a sound and to hear how the sound changes based on the compression. So I highly recommend the Keeley compressor here. The output from that goes into an MXR Script Reissue of the famous Phase 90. So that's really the only modulation or sound manipulating hardware pedal that I use right now. The output from the Phase 90 goes directly into a Laney Digbeth preamp. This is a great, inexpensive, straightforward bass preamp. It actually has an effects loop too, so I could really put the compressor into the effects loop, but based on the size of the pedal board, I'm really trying to economize space here. So you really get two channels on the Digbeth, kind of a FET transistor style channel and then a tube style channel. And you have a lot of capabilities in what the switches do as well. So you can have it so that you can switch between the FET and the tube side, or you can do a mix of them. You can have the foot switch on the left be a bypass or a mute, and we'll hear some different sounds of those as well. This entire pedal board is powered by one of those really small MXR mini ISO bricks. So this has up to 5 outputs. They're very isolated, no noise from the pedal board, based on AC power. I've not gotten any hums or anything like that I used to get when I daisy chained like a one spot. I recommend waiting till this goes on sale. If you can hang on to a Black Friday sale, I was able to get this off Amazon for half price. So it was like $50. And it's very small, fit it right on the pedal board there, and highly recommended. All right, let me just put the bass on, and I'll just kind of go through some of the effect sounds. I'll put some labels up on the screen so I can describe the effect going on and off, etc., and you can hear what all of that sounds like. So I'll finish off this tour talking about a couple of the other instruments that I've started to use. I've done a number of videos using Kalimbas, and I'll have a link down below to a representative one. So I have 3 different Kalimbas, all from Hokema, a company in Germany. These things are top-notch. You do have to tune them occasionally, and a lot of videos online how to do that. Maybe I'll make one as well. So they're all tuned differently, and you can tell on this one, this is a B9. There's 9 tines, and they're thinner and smaller than this one, which is much bigger tines, is the B7, because it has 7 tines. So this is an A minor, although I've changed the tuning of one of the tines. And this is in the C pentatonic scale. Here's just kind of a quick difference between the two. So that's the B9, and here's the B7. And finally, I've recently taken up the recorder. I haven't done any videos yet because I'm still learning, and you can get really high quality plastic recorders for not a lot of money. I mean, I spent about anywhere between $30 and $40 for the 3 that I have. I have a couple of Aulos, a 709 Haka and a 509, 509 Symphony. That's this one. And I also have a Yamaha 322, a newer model. It's got kind of like a rosewood look to it. So you might ask, why 3? They all have different sounds. And this Aulos, the Haka, is actually kind of difficult to play as a beginner, but the sound and the expressiveness is amazing, so I'll definitely grow into that. So there'll be a video with recorders soon, getting kind of ambient with those. I hope you enjoyed this little tour. Probably a little bit longer than for a studio that really doesn't have a lot of a lot of components to it, but it does exactly what I want. I know how everything works, and it's set up exactly the way that I want it. Feel free to ask any questions, and if you have a channel out there that also has a studio, I'd love to see it, so please put a link in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and good luck with your own music.